guest, and I'm joined by Kandie, the Managing Director of IDB Capital, to speak to us about primarily financing businesses. And as IDB, you finance different businesses. Maybe you could tell us, is it just anyone, just for the sake, just to move away from the assumption that people may know who would be a beneficiary of of the finances that IDB would give, or the support IDB would give. What is the criteria of knowing who can actually be given support by IDB?
Thank you, Daniel, for inviting me to the studio. IDB, or Industrial Development Bank, as it was formerly known, is a development finance institution that is supported by the government of Kenya. Our funding is to small and medium enterprises. Usually we look at companies that are keen to expand, to upgrade their operations, to modernize their operations. So generally we are looking at companies that have already started and now they want to take the next phase in terms of expanding their operations. So that is our target client. You'll find most of them will probably have a turnover of about 50 million and staff of about 50 to 100. Though now with tech companies coming in, we are having bigger companies with less staff, but we take that into consideration as well.
Okay.
Yes.
And in terms of sectors, are you specific on which sectors to support? Because you will find, ideally when you think about industrial, the thinking is about factories, the more technical and that kind of those category of companies. Are we looking at also other companies that are not as technical or as industry driven as others?
As you know, we are Industrial Development Bank, so our bias is on industries. But generally, we look at sectors that are strategic to the government. As a government-owned institution, ours is to intervene where credit is not sufficient for strategic sectors of the government. And today, we are talking of the big four. So we'll be looking at food security and nutrition, companies in agro-processing. We are looking at companies in manufacturing. We are looking at companies, let's say pharmaceuticals, let's say manufacturing of drugs and medicine. We are looking at companies manufacturing for the housing, for the housing sector. So we go according to the present national agenda of the government. And that's why I say right now our focus is on the big four. How do we support the big four? In which areas is there a lack of sufficient credit or sufficient financial support for the realization of the big four agenda?
And from how things look now, from where you sit, are we having which pillar of the big four are you having most people coming for support from you?
We are having a lot of interest coming from agro-processing. I think it's also an area that the government has been putting an emphasis on, and it's an area that has got a lot of support. If you look generally at agriculture, a big percentage of our produce goes to waste, post-harvest losses.
Yes.
So there are a lot of people coming up wanting to set up juice processing factories, tomato paste, storage facilities for cereals. So we are seeing a lot of interest in that. We are also seeing a lot of interest in general manufacturing, value addition. There are many people looking at how do we add value to what we have. How do we manufacture what we are currently importing so that we can reduce our import bill? So those are some of the areas that we are seeing a lot of interest. Obviously, housing has been a big interest for a long time. We have a big shortage of housing in this country. So we continue seeing people coming for housing to produce alternative manufacturing materials. We are seeing interest from the steel industry. So those are the areas that we see. We particularly have seen quite a big interest in the tea processing. We have a couple of applications from tea factories wanting to set up other lines of production, others wanting to set up factories afresh. So that's also a very big area of interest.
Okay. Yeah. And we talk about financing and the likes, and one of the key things that comes up is the interest rate. Are you operating on the commercial bank interest rate, under the same regime, or do you have a discounted rate, or how do you operate?
We operate differently from commercial banks because we realize that some of the companies coming to us, we have another strategic agenda other than the banks who are looking at, for instance, maximizing on shareholder value. We are looking at development outcomes like job creation. So our rates tend to be slightly lower than the bank rates. However, we do not compete specifically on interest rates. For instance, now we are lending at between 11 and 13%. But we do not consider interest rates as an area of intervening in terms of the market. We are looking at other more fundamental parameters, and I would say two of them are: one, the tenor, how long do we provide the loan for? So you will see that in the current situation, very few companies are able to borrow beyond 3 years or even 5 years. But our lending goes up to 8 years. So we are looking at the tenor. Automatically, once you increase the tenor, even if the interest rate is slightly lower or within the market rates, it still provides a breathing space for a company because the monthly repayments then become lower. The other area that we intervene in is on the moratorium. We recognize it takes time for companies to establish and actually start production and attain enough cash flows to pay the credit that we have provided. So we provide a grace period within which a company may then pay only the principal, and then they may only pay the interest rates, and then later on, once the moratorium period is over, they're able to start repaying the principal. That way, we are able to match the cash flow from the production that we are financing with our own demand for loan repayment. So we provide about 2 years of a grace period, depending on the nature of operations. So it's really for the applicants to tell us, I need 6 months, I need 1 year, I need 1.5 years for 1 and 2 reasons. Okay. So it will depend on the nature of the financing.
Okay, yes. And you lend between 5 million and 200 million.
Yes,
that's the range. And so is all this coming from the government, or do you have partnerships with other institutions?
The traditional method of financing for development finance institutions is through lines of credit. For instance, now we have a line of credit from India. Sure, some viewers may have seen it in the papers. We are calling it the EXIM line of credit. It is a line of credit signed between the government of Kenya and the government of India for the importation of plant, equipment, and machinery. This recognizes that one of the areas that we need to help companies in is in upscaling production. And upscaling production or upscaling operations requires technology investment. So this is aimed at intervening to enable companies to attain better technology, more modern technology. You'll find, for instance, Dann, whereas one of the areas or difficulties SMEs point is the cost of electricity, one of the contributors of a high cost of electricity is outdated technology. So if companies are able to get more power efficient technology, then the problem of high cost of electricity will get minimized.
Okay, and you've talked about, when you talk about the issue about power and the cost of it, and this becomes a significant recurrent expenditure for SMEs especially, which will hit them pretty hard. How do you handle cases of when they are unable to repay because their costs have begun, their business may not have moved as fast as they'd have wanted, and may not have the returns that they would have expected, but they still, need to be servicing their debt?
It happens that sometimes you may lend at 2 or 3 years down the line, a company is unable to meet the repayment, in which case we discuss what is the way forward, what can be done to salvage the situation. Sometimes the loan may require restructuring. That is, if, for instance, it was supposed to be repaid in 5 years, we can increase to 6 or 7 years, depending on the circumstances that are on the table. So we are open to restructuring. It is a general banking practice to restructure loans when a credit is in distress. So that is our first point of call. How do we restructure? Which are the areas that we are finding difficulties? We may also recommend, let's say, capacity building. Sometimes the client may not probably may be having leakages in their own systems. They may not be having a system that is able to track efficiency. So we will look at the many areas. How can we intervene to get this loan salvaged? So we do have clients that go into distress, and we discuss and see what is the best way forward.
Okay, and which are some of the organizations that you've actually helped that, are, every company has those that is, the badge on its shoulder. Which project have you engaged in that you feel that IDB Capital can then say that this is evidence of our work?
I would be very proud to pinpoint Kevian, that is the makers of Pick and Peel. They are one of the clients that we finance at their beginning. We also finance Bidco at their setup, and not very long time ago I had a very fruitful conversation with the chairman Vimal Shah, and he was actually very happy to pinpoint that IDB was very instrumental in enabling him start his company. So those are some of the big brands that IDB can pinpoint. Of course, we do have other smaller companies that I may not necessarily mention. We do have a track record of having financed industries. Before the structural adjustment programs of the 90s, almost all government, a lot of government investments were done through IDB, whether we are talking of Kikomi, Rivertex. A lot of those companies were financed through IDB.
Okay, yeah. And just before we come back to the conversation about IDB and financing the Big Four agenda and businesses, let's cross over briefly to the county of Kisumu, where Oko Kusa is standing by with a discussion, just keeping us abreast with what the feeling is on the ground about the 2/3 gender rule bill that is meant to have its discussion continuing in Parliament. Okusa, let's take it down from your side.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. As we speak here in Kisumu, of course, I'm at the ACK grounds. That is the Anglican Church grounds, where I'm going to speak with some activists, gender activists, who are going to share their feelings regarding this gender rule, which is set to be read in Parliament today. We all understand what its components are. We all know that it's been, it's been thwarted in Parliament for 3 times since 2018, when the Constitution was promulgated. It has never been, it has never gone through Parliament, and of course we all know it's something that a lot of people are expecting to see its outcome today when it's presented in Parliament today. We know Duale has prepared a bill that we're going to be presented in Parliament today, and of course this has elicited a lot of reactions even from top leaders. We know that the opposition leader Raila Odinga has thrown his weight behind the bill, same to Deputy President, and a lot of leaders have also expressed their feelings regarding this particular bill. Let me just bring to set one of the ladies here who is going to share with us a feeling regarding this particular gender rule. Just start by introducing yourself. Please move closer.
Thank you so much. My name is Mariam Abdallah, a gender activist in Kisumu. What I want to say is that indeed we have come a long way, and I would like to thank Parliament for where the bill is right now. What I want to say is historically women have been very few, and I think it's high time we increase the number of women in Parliament. If you look, even despite having the constitutional provisions, despite having the 2/3 provision, even in the cabinet, the women are still few. So this is to challenge Parliament that this time we would like the gender rule. They agree, then we will have moved a step forward as a country. Yes.
And some people have had this opinion that if women are not subjected to these elections, then it is there's no equality, that they should also go through the election process like their male counterparts.
Yes, indeed that is very true. I will not disagree. But if you look at as a country where we have come from, we are still struggling even to be able to elect women from a long way. So I think it's one thing to say that indeed we need to fight in the ballot, yes, but I think it's also another thing that we have the issues of culture, the issues of stereotyping that have brought a lot of issues in the country and made in this country. So I think we need to move out of that. Let's give it a chance and see how it works out. I believe women can be great leaders in this country.
75 elected and nominated. We have 47 elected in the counties, 22 elected. and 6 nominated. You are speaking of 75 women holding leadership positions in Kenya currently. Don't you think that is enough?
I don't think it's enough. It will never be enough. I think women need to lead. And I think, yes, indeed, the cost will be too high, but we also need to minimize in terms of corruption, what has been going on in the country. We need to minimize. And the people who, if you look generally, there's what women have that men don't have. And I believe women tend to work more in terms of accountability, in terms of transparency and accountability. Women are more transparent and accountable than men. So if we put more women, then we are bound to reduce corruption. And yes, more women.
Okay, well, let me take your colleague here and also hear her views regarding this two-third gender rule. Just start by introducing yourself.
My name is Maureen Kemunto, a gender activist from Kisumu, working for TEAM. What I would like to say is that the two-third gender rule bill is a very good thing. Very good thing for the women in Kenya, because Kenya being a patriarchal society, we need more women. Now, if we give examples of women who've been elected or nominated elsewhere, they have done a lot for this country. We have a feeling that if that bill is passed to become an act, then it will really help our country in so many areas. We need but the National Assembly, that is still not enough, and that is the reason why we still insist that if it's passed, then it will be for the betterment of the whole country, not just the women.
Okay. Yeah. Of course, we know that Rwanda, Tanzania already registered some remarkable strides there as far as this gender rule is concerned. Do you think Kenya can manage to get to those levels?
Unfortunately, I don't want to say fortunately or unfortunately, the laws that are being used in Tanzania and Rwanda were borrowed from Kenya. We had started this journey a long time ago, and even the drafters of the 2010 constitution had this in mind. They didn't want a situation whereby one gender was overly represented, and that is why Tanzania and Rwanda came and borrowed our law, and it's really working out for them. So if Kenya implemented the same, then it will be a very good thing for us here.
8 years since it was promulgated, 3 attempts thwarted. Is there still hope?
For us, there's still hope. Now that at least we have so many male gender in the assembly supporting this, for us, we are hoping for the best. And even if it fails, we still have another 6 months. We will wait another 6 months and still push it in the assembly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Let me take Dan. Let me bring in a man to share their feelings regarding this particular two-third gender rule, and his name is George Collins, and he's going to also bring in the male aspect in the debate.
That in this point of time, when already we know that we passed the Constitution of Kenya, and the provisions are very clear in terms of how women are supposed to be included in key decision-making areas. Kenya borrows heavily from the international obligations. And if you look at Article 27 of the Constitution of Kenya, already we have a framework in terms of how to ensure that the women have equal opportunity. Both women and men have equal opportunity on ensuring that they're involved. And you can even go further to Article 81, which says categorically that even in public bodies, women have a space that they must. And it is not something that is a privilege. It's crazy that at this point in time, where we have legislatures who know very well that we had schedules in terms of how some of these articles were supposed to be, in terms of how Parliament was supposed to enact legislations. Today, we are still negotiating with people and massaging people who are being paid by taxpayers to go out there and ensure that they legislate, because that is why Kenyans are paying them. So to me, it's not a question of negotiation. It's not a question of parliamentarians have an obligation to ensure that they follow the Constitution in the spirit of Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya. And I want to tell Kenyans that a time has come where we must remind the parliamentarians that we are the ones who have the executive authority. We have not surrendered a responsibility to men and women in parliament who are supposed to legislate in line with the Constitution of Kenya 2010. So we are not being done any favor, to the best of my knowledge. So let parliamentarians wake up once and for all and sort this mess out, because we are tired that gender is concerned.
Of course, we know that before.
That's Oko Kusa coming to us from the county of Kisumu and getting some views from some gender activists. And you could see on the other side of the screen that we have some of the MPs beginning to walk into the chambers where they're expected to continue the debate on the gender rule and the concerns around that. And before we come back to our conversation in studio, very briefly, let's cross over to Bernardo Juang, who is in the county of Migori, to give us a brief on that end. Then we can come back to studio for a bit. Bernard.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. Well, thank you very much, Dan. We are here in Rongo town, whereby locals are really waiting just to hear from their leaders on what will be happening at the National Assembly. Remember what's going on. It is a debate that started sometimes back, and today it started again yesterday with female leadership turning up in large numbers supporting the bill 100%. And today it will be discussed again at the National Assembly. Remember, just take you back. At the National Assembly, we have over 75 women. We have 75 women leaders, and with 22 elected, 6 nominated, while 47 were elected from the counties. At the Senate, we have 3 elected women from 47 counties and 18 nominated. That's according to the current constitution of the Kenya. It is not that good. And currently, we are just going to talk to these some of the locals here. Remember, last week, Deputy President William Ruto urged MPs to support the bill for the sake of their mothers, wives, and even their daughters. And also, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga urged the MPs to support the bill and make sure that it is passed. And now we're just going to get it from the Rongo people. What do you think about this two-third gender rule?
Yes, I'm Marco Diambadongo. I'm the youth representative Rongo. The gender rules, as the Raila Amolo Odinga, our people's president, have said, we do support it 100% because the women in the country, we have the majority of the women, so we should support them. So if you don't support them, it will reach a time where we will be less, we men. So who will advocate for us?
What do you think why do you think this bill is important?
This bill is important because it is the share of the power, and also the women will be enlightened and to know whatever is going on. Not we the men only, we should lead, but the ladies also, and even the youths. So if we ban the gender rules, which means that the youth will not get posts in other places. So we do support this thing 100%. If Baba said, he has said. We don't want to disappoint Baba and our Excellency President of Kenya. So we do support this thing as people of Rongo and youths of Rongo.
What do you expect from your leaders today from the parliament?
Our leader from the parliament, they should show the whole country that they do support whatever was voted for them to go and do. If it is the matter of change, they should change the country, they support the gender rules. Unless somebody somewhere has their own opinion, but not of the people.
Well, thank you very much. I'll speak to another person here. What do you think about this two-third gender rule?
Yeah, you are speaking to Asho Kumunyagoma. I'm chairman of Youth Rongo. I support this one-third gender rule 100% because at first, it has been supported by our party leader, Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. And wherever Raila wants us to go, we will go directly because that is the right direction, because he has been taking us the right direction. He has never failed us. So I support this gender rule. One, women must represent us in the national. They must be elected and given time, not just being nominated. If they are nominated, they don't do their work respectively. They don't do it perfectly because they are only nominated. So they earn that salary and they help themselves with the salary.
But it is a debate that started sometimes back, and yesterday it started again. What do you expect from your leaders from the National Assembly today?
What I expect from our leaders is full respect. They should have maximum respect. If you have been told that this is the right way to follow, let them follow the right way. We don't expect any disappointment, because that is the right way. We respect our women, and that's why we live with them. So if they represent us in the national government, it is most important.
Do you think the bill is important?
That bill is most important to all of us as Kenyans, even we in the grassroots. It is most important to us. So it will be passed 100%. And we support it. We as Kenyans, let it be 1/3 gender rule. Let them pass it immediately.
Well, I thank you. I'll speak to another person here. What do you think about this 2/3 gender rule?
Okay. Me, I think it is a better thing they have decided 2/3 gender women, because to create create chance and a space for human in parliament. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Do you think it's important?
It's very important. Yeah, it's very important, so that even the women can have, women can have voices in the parliament, so that they can raise up issues that can defend women genders. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Dan, I was speaking there to Rongo residents. They are saying that they are really backing this the bill, and they are saying that today, as the MPs going to talk about this at the National Assembly, they are expecting a lot, and they are now appealing to their leaders not to disappoint them. Give these women chance to lead this country, and also appealing to them not to disappoint their party leaders and adhere to what they have been urged to do. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Bernardo Joan, coming to us from the county of Migori. Some interesting insights there. And, you know, like I said, we've got a lady in the studio, Kandie, who's the managing director of IDB Capital. And Karen, before we get back into financing businesses and the Big Four agenda and all the, you know, big talk, as a woman in leadership, because this is one of the things that is kind of being pushed for, how's the experience been for you?
Dan, thank you for that question. We definitely do need more women in leadership. Sometimes it can be lonely, to be very honest, because let's say you go for a meeting, you are 10 of you and only 2 of you, you are the only one who is a woman. So sometimes you need somebody that you can relate to. So I do hope that this gender bill goes through, because we are talking about beating traditions. It's not about women not being qualified. It's about there being a tradition that it is men who are in leadership. But as we go forward, we are seeing the need for that female voice in even top leadership. We need to see women who can also be mentors to our young daughters. So I would appeal to the MPs as they look at the gender bill to remember that they do have daughters that need mentors. They do have daughters that should be able to watch the TV and say, yes, Karen is on studio, I can as well be like Karen. So I do hope that they are going to pass the bill for the sake of this country, because it is unfortunate that 50% of the population is not adequately represented in leadership.
Okay,
Yes.
and like someone quoted yesterday President Obama saying that it's unfortunate if half of your team is not playing.
Yes.
That is the argument. And then we can now just come back to this conversation in regards to financing businesses. And we see, like IDB, for instance, you're very keen on, IDB Capital that is, you're keen on promoting manufacturing, health, textile, agribusiness, agro-processing, education. You've listed them. And I want to just zero in on one which was had been a keen point for now the former CS of the ministry you sit under, that's Edan Mohammed. He was pretty keen on textile. And usually we'd tell the growth or the interests generated by a sector by how much people are seeking to get support to grow businesses in that sector. What are we seeing in regards to textile? Are we seeing more companies coming and trying to get support to build their textile companies or not?
Yes, we are seeing quite a big interest from the textile industry. As you know, the apparel sector and the textile is one of the industries that we've succeeded even in accessing the AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunities Act opportunity that allows textiles to be exported to the US duty-free. So from that, we are seeing a lot of interest, not just from the EPZ companies, but also from offshoots. Companies that want to start supplying to the EPZ, companies that are also exporting, not necessarily within the EPZ, but they are exporting apparel from this country. As you all also know, government has been keen on reviving the cotton industry. This is part of the interest, and from this we should see an interest in the whole value chain within the cotton, from growing of the cotton to the ginneries, to the textile mills, and then also to the final product of making the component. So we do have a big opportunity in the textiles. As you realize, a lot of our textiles are imported, and that's an opportunity to actually produce them locally and cut on the import bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about education? What are the different kind of farms that you finance in education? Like in what specific areas of education? Because the broader conversation or thinking, off the top of the mind would be about building schools and such. But what else? What else do you finance in regards to education?
The other interest we've seen in education is on student housing, especially for universities and colleges. As you know, there is a big shortage in that. Previously, if you remember, universities used to admit students according to the bed capacity or to the accommodation capacity that they have. But today they've come out of that, opening the space for private players to actually go in and build hostels for students. So we have seen a big increase in that. We have an application. Actually, yes, we do have an application for two applications for students' hostels, and we are seeing a big inquiry on that from that.
Yeah, because that has been a concern over the years, seeing a number of people having the students a bit stranded when they don't have where to stay,
Yes.
and yet they've come from very far. Some of them are not from the area, so it's not someone who can be a day scholar, that they can actually engage in that. What about, you've mentioned about plant machinery and the agro-processing you've touched on, right? And healthcare. How exactly are you financing? What are the kind of projects you're getting traction for funding in regards to the healthcare element of the Big Four agenda?
We are seeing applications on hospital equipment, generally, MRI machines, incubators. So we are seeing an interest from private health providers for that. As you know, a lot of health services are in the hands of the private sector, and there is a growing need for that because health is a basic need for everybody. So we do finance that. We have that in our portfolio, financing healthcare. We were among the first people, for instance, to finance fertility facilities for one of our clients, and we would say that this is an area that we expect to grow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what happens when you've got some projects that are just not working? Like you said, yes, you restructure the debt, but is there a point where you can just decide to part ways, and how do you get to that kind of situation?
Usually we land on a fully secured basis, and usually say that when you give us your security, it's a vote of confidence in your own project, and it is not unusual for a lending institution to say where we have reached, I think let us realize the security. You pay part of the money. The security should be able to meet part of the cost of the loan, and probably also leave the client running their own businesses. So we do come to a situation where we have to realize the security, like any other lender.
But
Yes.
you're not to be greater risk takers than banks.
No, we are greater risk takers, and that is why we finance strategic sectors of the economy. Usually they will be strategic because these are sectors that the government wants to promote, like textiles. However, they are higher risk than average, So we come in as interveners because there is insufficient lending coming from the private banking and from the capital markets. So we look at those areas where there is a shortage of money, and yet these are areas that government is interested in growing. For instance, textile is of great interest because it's one of the main providers of employment. For every sewing machine, there will be an operator. And for every 5 to 10 operators, there will be a machinist who services those machines. So it's a very big employment creator, and that's why it has a lot of interest from the government. So we do lend projects that are higher risk than the average.
Than the
So we
banks
have a
especially.
bigger, as we put it in our jargon, we have a bigger risk appetite
Okay.
than the banks.
You're more willing to take risks than,
Yes.
than the banks would. Now, this is, you know, all well and good, but we have the sectors that are seemingly not too much the focus of many lenders. For instance,
Yes.
some of the unconventional ones, be it people who are in the arts, the creative industry. Is there any kind of opportunity for the creative industry with, say, IDB Capital?
We would say that there is a space for everybody. If you have a product that can demonstrate there is value addition, then you can come to us for lending. Of course, the onus will be on you to tell us what is the value creation that you're doing. And you know, when we come to creatives, it's not just about the pictures and so on. There is the film industry.
Yes.
There is also even the textile as an apparel. There is a lot of design work that goes through that. So that's again an area for, you can say, the people, creatives, also get involved in. So there is a scope. So long as a project is value addition, then it automatically makes it of interest to IDB.
Okay.
Yes.
Because, I mean, that has been a concern over the years. You'll find even in banks, they'll go to banks or to other lenders, and, you know, find a lot of the people in the creative industry will not get as much support because maybe some of them may not be as formally trained in their trade as well sometimes to be able to know how to structure and the pitch. And maybe at that point, can just tell us what are the kind of things that someone needs to put in mind when they're pitching to ensure that they can get the financing that they need, because someone may have the most brilliant idea which can create jobs, can change the society, name it, but may not know how to present it in a way that is going to be, you know, acceptable for funding or other support.
Generally, we'll be looking at several issues. Because we are talking of value addition, we'll be asking, do you have the raw material for what you want to manufacture or what you want to create? If you have the raw material, and do you have a market? So that's the beginning and the end of the project. Then in between, then we can work on a business plan. What kind of business plan do you have? Have you thought through your plan? Have you tested? You know, have you at least started on a small scale basis, and then you're coming to us for upscaling? Because it's until you test the waters that you know how the industry is. So we very much emphasize on people who have at least tested part of the waters. For instance, we are getting quite some interest from the mango value chain. And some of the people coming to us are already exporting mangoes to the Middle East and so on. So they want now to start processing the mangoes to palm. So you know, they already know about mangoes. They already know where to source for the mangoes. They know the various types of mangoes. They know how to handle the mangoes. So we are satisfied that they know about the raw material part of it. They are also tested the market in selling the mangoes whole. So we can also say they've come into contact with prospective buyers of the palm. So that becomes a very good project for us. Then we are able to structure it together with the client. The client will come up, let's say, with a draft business plan, and we'll work on that business plan, for instance, to look at areas of efficiency, to look at whether they've taken into account how they are going to keep the records, because that's also very important, to know which money is coming, whether it's coming on time, and whether you are paying your suppliers and so on and so forth. So we are able to structure together. So as a development finance institution, we go beyond the lending. We also go into capacity building and sitting down with our clients and seeing this opportunity, how can we maximize on it? How can we make it more efficient? Yes.
Okay, and I just want my final question as we close. You'll provide financing.
Yes.
But does IDB Capital in any way provide any other kind of support, be it training, because we've seen some organizations that will support, yes, with the financing, but might also help train, especially the SMEs, to ensure that, or that they have, that the money is not misused or underutilized or otherwise?
Yes, we do, and we work very closely with our clients. Of course, this is an area that has got opportunity to be expanded. As I have explained, when we are doing the client is doing the business plan, we work with the client. And from there, we have quarterly visits to every project that we have financed. And in those quarterly visits, we discuss and see what are the financials telling us. Automatically, that means the client needs to be able to keep their records well, so that when we go for quarterly visits, for some of them, we have to tell them, you know, where your business has reached, you need a qualified accountant. Probably I'm biased because I'm also an accountant. You need a qualified accountant for your project because we can see your money, your bank reconciliations are not being done on time, or this is what your auditors are saying. So we also encourage them to keep good records and to have their books audited. We also discuss other challenges that they could be facing because in our day-to-day operations, we are approached by many people. So we interact with people in different sectors. So we also become an area where people can actually meet. We can have probably a client who needs the services of another client that is in our books. In which case then we can provide the linkage.
Thank you very much, Karen Kandie, who's the Managing Director of the Industrial Development Bank, that's IDB Capital, for speaking to us, and now some better insight in regards to the financing of businesses, the Big Four agenda, and we've seen that there's opportunity for SMEs to get financing from IDB Capital, and you can get their details online. I believe the information is online. It was online, yes, you can get the information online. We take a short break on NTV Today. We'll be back with more, including the debate on the House of Parliament in regards to the 2/3 rule gender debate.